So just to give everyone a quick update, whoever has joined us, we're just waiting for people to join in. So give us a couple of minutes and we'll start soon. So everyone who's joined in, we're just waiting for people to come on in. It's a Thursday afternoon. I'm sure people are getting over with their meetings. So let's give them a couple of minutes. I see a lot of people joining in as I speak. Okay, so Joyshri, can you hear me now?
You're audible.
Everyone who has joined in, just a quick update. We're waiting for people to join in and we'll start at 4:05, which is a couple minutes from now.
The audio is clear, right? I'm audible?
Yes.
Yes, Rima, you are. Someone is saying, Joyshri is saying that I'm not audible enough, I'm assuming, but others, can you hear me? Srivatsan, Rima?
Yes, you are audible.
Oh, great.
Hear you.
Joyshri, maybe it's an issue with your speakers or something. Maybe you can check that. We're just about to start in a couple minutes. So for everyone who's joined in, we're just going to wait for one more minute before we start the webinar. Yeah, so I think we can start now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar where we're going to talk about focusing on insights and leaving the HR operations to AI. I'm going to be your moderator for the evening. I am Adit, co-founder and CEO of Lena AI. At Lena AI, we work with 70 plus organizations globally to help them reduce day-to-day HR operations and save that time to focus on business first initiatives. We're having these hundreds of conversations these days where we get HR teams who are bogged down with a lot of repetitive manual work, which is coming on emails, calls, WhatsApp, etc. And these teams want to get rid of that and use their valuable time for business focused work. While we were thinking of putting together this webinar, the key learning we wanted our peers who have joined us in our audience today to take back is why automating HR operations via AI relevant today, more so in the pandemic's context. What are some of the common problems that organizations face, and how have they been thinking about solving these using AI? Essentially, we are going to help the audience take back exact snippets of what they can actually work on and implement. We will talk about the entire journey from what the current problems are, what essentially is sucking a lot of valuable HR time, how to think about solving that, and then what are some of the strategic initiatives you can take with the time you just saved. With that thought, let me welcome our first panelist, Mr. Nikhil Morade. So Nikhil right now is the global head of HR technology and HR shared services at Cipla. He's the member of the global HR leadership team. Nikhil heads the global HR technology and the HR shared services function. He has managed and implemented large technology transformation initiatives across diverse geographies. He is responsible for the HR system governance and leads multiple digital automation and digitization projects throughout his journey in HR for the past few years. His experience includes managing end-to-end IT delivery and project management for HR and managing global HR shared services, including SAP operations. His core strengths are in strategic planning of digital transformation, HR technology, HR shared services, HR analytics, IT delivery, and outsourcing. So I extend a warm welcome to you, Nikhil. Thank you so much for taking the time for being with us today.
Hey, thanks, Adit, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Right. Our second panelist is Reema Chaudhary. She is the Executive Vice President and CHRO at Datamatics. As EVP and CHRO, Dr. Reema Ghosh leads Datamatics HR functions globally, which has more than 10,000 employees and operations in the US, India, Middle East, Europe, and the Philippines. As a senior seasoned HR leader and practitioner with over 2 decades of experience in corporate and academia, Dr. Reema has been instrumental in building technology and leadership capabilities in reputed global enterprises like IBM, Sony Picture Networks India, Queen Knox, etc. In her previous roles, she has championed change management in the technology and culture space to bring in the right blend of high tech and high touch culture. Dr. Reema has been an international mentor for Middlesex University London and is also a trained trainer by Sony Pictures Network UK on the Energy Project. She has received multiple HR Excellence Awards, including 50 Most Influential HR Tech Leaders 2015 at the World HRD Congress, Young HR Professional of the Year at the Asia Pacific HRM Congress 2009. So everyone, please welcome Reema. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out the time to spend this afternoon with us.
Thank you, Adit.
Now, last but not the least, we also have Sri Watson Mohan, who is the VP of Technology at XOXO Day. Sri Watson is a seasoned technologist and entrepreneur. He has had a mixed career in building top-notch products in large multinational and smaller startups. His earliest startup was covered in Forbes magazine as one of the hottest growing startups and was acquired by one of the largest corporate transport providers. In his current role, he helps build amazing employee engagement and rewarding experiences delivered through easy use of technology platforms. Welcome, Sri Watson. Thank you so much again for taking out the time of doing this with us.
Thanks, Adit, for the introduction.
Great. So let's get to this. Now, how we have kind of built this is to ask all of our panelists to talk about their experiences and probably give us one problem each that they have found out and solved using AI. So my first question is going to be to Nikhil. Nikhil, what is that one problem that your HR department at Cipla has identified and is solving using AI. I'd probably like you to go in a bit detail about how CIPLA is structured. What were the problems you were facing? How are you thinking about solutions? And if you have implemented, what is the implementation process like? So if you can take us through this, that'll be great.
Sure, Adit. Thank you. And again, good afternoon, everyone. So, just to give everyone a brief, the way CIPLA is, it's a complex organization, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar organization. It's very complex. One of the key things of CIPLA is it essentially runs at a very lightning speed, right? The agility is the thing that is in CIPLA. Now, the way CIPLA is kind of structured is we have sites who manufactured all the medicines. Then we have a commercial function who are responsible for making cells, and then we have corporate functions, right? And just to kind of add, we also have functions which kind of cater to quality and they cater to research and development. So it's an amalgamation of a lot of different functions that come together to deliver the products, best in class products. Now, I think if we just have to go back and given the stature of the organization and the complexities, right? So one of the things that we always feel challenging was with respect to how the communication from HR with respect to policies, processes, any know-hows gets cascaded to each and every person, yeah, or
Right.
each and every associate within the organization. So now one of the things that we've always found out is employees are dynamic, right? So we will have people, there will be new people that get added, and people will kind of move on as well. So the whole base is very dynamic. So how do we make it sure that if your base is going to be dynamic, how will we make it sure that from an organization standpoint, any
Mhm.
communication, any know-hows about processes, any knowledge, how do we make it sure that it gets cascaded seamlessly, very transparently, and on a kind of a very user experienced basis, it gets kind of cascaded to each and every one. So
Yeah.
that's the areas that we were looking at within SIPLA.
Got it. So you basically have this huge organization, which I know is global. I know you have people all across the world, right? So you're saying that it was the issue at hand was to try and make sure that all of them get the right information at lightning speed from the central HRD, the HR department. Is that
That's
okay? Okay, got it. So now can you explain a bit about your existing application landscape and why do you think it was not possible, and why was that a problem with the existing applications you used?
Sure. So what happens is, and like I said, right? So the organization runs at a very lightning speed. So every year, we keep on making incremental progresses in the processes, and
Right.
HR processes would be the highest of the processes that runs in an organization.
Right.
So what happens is now, given the complexity, the way we are structured and the regions that we are kind of spread out in. So outside of India, we also have a huge presence in Europe. We have presence in emerging markets, Southeast Asia, and 12, 13 different countries.
Yep.
Going back, we have a big presence in South Africa and even North America, right?
Yep.
So for us, what happens is many a times this policies processes get revised. And one of the thing that essentially coming back, what happens is we also have a lot of point solutions for most of the specific areas of HR. So
Right.
for example, if I have to run in my HRI system, I would have one point solution for that. If I have a payroll, I would have one point solution for that.
Got it.
Similarly, for statutory requirements, I would have a point solution for that.
Mhm.
So, typically for organization like us, we work with maybe the specialist in those fields. So
Right.
we ended up having n number of point solutions. So now when what happens is when you have this point solutions available, the way the solutions will interact with people, way probably the support staff who's going to kind of support those applications, way they will interact with people is all going to be different, right? So We don't have a unanimous or a uniform layer through which all of this communication will go to an employee.
Right.
So I think that's one of the complexity. So probably one of the business, the way they would be communicating might completely be different as compared to the other business, the way they would be communicating to the employees about the same policies or about the same processes, right? So I
Got
think
it.
that's the challenge that we carry.
Got it. So I understand that there are so many different systems, point solutions. You obviously want to go for the best in class. So you have multiple systems, and then you have a very dynamic policy base because you talked about lightning speed. You want to move fast, break things. So
Yeah,
your policies have to support that as well. So
absolutely.
these are all the things that were changing, and that point solution, and these are all the things that were have to merge together in probably one single seamless communication layer is what I'm hearing from you right now. So
Absolutely, that's right.
that's
And
the problem.
just
Yeah.
to kind of add on there, so what happens? Yeah, absolutely. And so what happens out is when you are changing things at a very rapid speed, you have to make it sure that each and every employee is getting communicated about the essence and the intent of the change, right?
Right.
Otherwise, if you're not able to communicate the intent of the change, half of your things are lost. So that's again just to add to what Adit you said.
Absolutely. So, this reminds me of a conversation I had with the CHRO of LTTS, and he said that we had an X limit to our insurance policy, and our HR team did not know why we had that X limit, right? And employees were coming and saying that, hey, why do we have such a low limit? But that decision was taken by the HR leadership because 99% of the claims were happening below that limit itself, right? So I think I completely feel you where you're coming from. So we now understand the problem, essentially, Nikhil. Now let's talk a bit about the solution. So what were your thoughts? What were the prerequisites that you had to make sure that were there before you went on this journey? And then what were the solutions that would solve for that problem that we've just come about?
Sure, Adit. So Adit, just to kind of add, so what happens is when you have this complexities around, certainly you need to adopt to a simple measure to address the complexity. I think that's the only way that you can deal with it. So what we said is while you might have n number of point solutions, let those point solutions do a very specific or very uh, uh, point stuff that they need to supposed to do, right? So we would not essentially go and rationalize the point solutions and compromise on what we want, right? So we would
Right.
stick with that. But we said that let's create probably a layer which is going to kind of cater to all this complexity, and it will make it sure that the whole communication to an employee, right, or the cascade of all of the assets or the experience bit of using different point solutions is all decluttered and is made seamless. So what we were looking at is almost creating a kind of a wrapper, which basically will be a gateway to all these different point solutions.
Right.
And that particular wrapper would also enable us to kind of communicate in a seamless manner and in a consistent manner about all the changes that we do in the organization.
Makes sense. So you've got this wrapper, as you mentioned, you've got this wrapper which is also powered with a lot of communication, right? The power to have that seamless instant communication maybe, and have that consistency, because that's one thing which is I've seen when speaking to a lot of CHROs is that, hey, I don't know whether the last HR team member is communicating the same essence of the policy, right? So I completely feel you there. So now we've understood the problem, we understood how you wanted to solve it, right? And what was the process in finalizing a solution? What were the key parameters? If you can talk about briefly about that, so that our audience can go back and have that checklist probably of sorts ready to look at solutions for these problems that you've talked about.
Absolutely. So when we were kind of looking at solving this particular problem, a few things came to our mind, and I think one we said is that it has to be a consumer grade. So, for example, today, if you want to kind of order something from Amazon, everything was on a click of a button and in an app, right? So we said that whatever complexity you have, it has to be in the back. For an
Right.
employee, it has to be one seamless experience or one seamless gateway of delivering that experience, right?
Okay.
So I think that having that complete construct associated around the thought of consumer grade experience was at the epicenter.
Got it.
The second one was, we also said that how do we make it sure that we would communicate consistently, right?
Mhm.
And you have to have an element when the element is able to kind of understand the essence and intent of the communication and also self-learn over the process, right?
Right.
So when we say that, what it means is, so for example, whenever, and certainly communications cannot be one way, right? Communications are always two way,
Right.
because even if you want to communicate to someone, someone will definitely have some questions around it, right? So that communication channel has to be a two-way channel. Then, if you have to build a two-way channel, the essence then goes back is your the element that going to use for communication also have to have an aspect of self-learning, so that
Right.
whatever you've understood, whatever you've cascaded, and if somebody asks you something, you have to learn in the process. And there we thought that we have to bring in an AI stuff or an AI element to make sure that element of self-learning comes up and element of iterations is kind of knocked off.
Got it. Got it. So basically, I'm sensing an AI virtual assistant of sorts.
Kind of, yeah.
Where you can do that two-way communication. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, one quick, maybe a fire question which you have to answer in like 10 seconds or 15 seconds is the ROI. So I know selling, these kind of solutions internally is a big task, right? So
Yeah.
how do you measure the ROI? How did you show the ROI to your management to get this done?
Sure. So I think there are three parts that I'll break ROIs into. Okay, the first part is the tangible part when there are financials associated. So probably it's all a math, right? I'm going to invest X amount of money, then I will calculate how much of cost takeout I can do, right? So that's, let's say, either I can take out my cost by sunsetting some of the existing applications, right? I can take out my cost, let's say, if there is a team that is going to work on certain applications, or there is a help desk team that is going to work in, and the element of automation is coming out. Certainly, I mean, some bandwidth is going to get released, so that
Yeah.
you can quantify. So this is purely math. So you invest X amount of money, Y amount of money is either saved or Y amount of money is either avoided in future, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's how you basically kind of, so that is a tangible aspect to calculating ROIs. And probably every organization, depending on their status, right, they would basically calculate X and Y, what cost will come and what cost will go out, right? So that's right. Now, coming back to the intangible aspect. So intangible aspect is something that you basically, at least I would not want to quantify. Those are the things that are actually the intent of why we do this, right? So for example, when we are talking about removing iterations in the communications, when we are talking about having consistency in the communication. So one of our challenges, if we are kind of rolling out a process, so let's say we've revamped our performance management process, or we have revamped our leave policy. One of our struggle always has been to consistently cascade that within employees. And
Right.
then every HR partner would end up calling us that I've received 50 calls a day, 100 calls a day, right?
Yeah.
So now I think that's the complete intangible benefit, right?
Yeah.
That you have somebody somewhere, you have eliminated that kind of a bandwidth. For people, you have avoided that. The second more important element is, just imagine if every employee is having all of this at a fingertip, right? They don't have to depend. And today, I think the whole engagement of an employee changes, or the experience of an employee changes. So, for example, if you go with an actual service delivery, you raise a ticket.
Right.
Typically, there are some SLAs defined, and
Yeah.
some members in the help desk team are supposed to respond it, right?
Yeah.
Even in the very ideal state, even if they respond within an SLA, I have lost my time, right? Even if I have a SLA of 6 hours, I've lost my 6 hours in kind of getting a response. So
Absolutely.
what happens is, I mean, today I think the world has moved on. So if you go out, employees are having some different experiences, right? Now, when you come within an organization, they have to wait 6 hours, they have to wait 9 hours, they have to wait 24 hours. So that somewhere starts creating some level of a frustration.
Right.
And not only that, if you make all of this information available at a fingertip to them, I mean, it's at a self-service to them. They don't need to depend on anybody in the organization, right? So certainly, I mean, this starts creating an element of experience in the organization. This starts creating an element of engagement, and it's proven scientifically that all of this basically experience and engagement automatically leads to better productivity and retentions.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So if I have to quickly summarize, the problem was multiple applications and best-in-class point solutions with a very high-speed growth culture, which led to a lot of policy changes. All of that got wrapped around in a AI virtual assistant, where people were able to do, find things, find information, do transactions, and instead of like probably logging a ticket or reaching out to the HRBP, they can get all of this at their fingertips on their mobile or on their laptop.
That's right.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for this. And now, on that note, I'd like to move on to Rima. And Rima, so my question to you remains the same. So what is that one or two problems that you are thinking of solving with AI and technology? If you can, again, start off by telling us a bit about your organization, its complexities, then, probably we'll have a discussion about the problems and then to the possible solutions that you're thinking of. So over to you, Rima. Love to know more about Datamatics.
Thank you, Adit, and thank you for inviting me to this platform. The topic is so trending, the topic is so relevant. I'm sure the audience would find it very useful. So about Datamatics, we are an organization with over 10,000 employees spread over different geographies. Our line of services, the service offerings are quite, it's spectrum, I would say. So right from BPM to IT to artificial intelligence and cognitive services to the robotic process automation. So we have it all. It's a wide spectrum. And because of this, obviously, when it comes to the organizational culture, you have a multitude of, it's actually quite a potpourri of different kinds of backgrounds, different kinds of diversities, not only in terms of gender, but in terms of education, experience, thoughts, culture, all of it kind of gets...
A lot of young blood as well, I suppose.
Yes. And yes, so millennials form the major part of our organization. 27 years would be the average age in the organization. So we essentially work very young people. So that's the spread. And being a technology company, I would say, irrespective of the COVID era COVID period that we are going through, we were pretty much accustomed to the digital platform. So digital was kind of all pervasive for us. So anything and everything in the employee life cycle process, if I look at any HR life cycle process to an exit stage, all of it was digitally enabled anyways.
Okay.
That happened now was the collaboration part, because yes, definitely from collaboration in a physical space to collaboration virtually, definitely needed us also to shift gears and quickly get accustomed to the new normal. But other than that, we were pretty much on a technology platform, quite digitally oriented and inclined. So that's where we have been. As an organization, we pride on the fact that our diversity is very impressive. Overall, we have about 42% women employees in the organization.
Amazing.
Yes, so that's quite a lot. So that speaks for itself as to what kind of a workplace we are. We have, all our surveys internally tell us that this is an employee-friendly company, which has been around with stability being one of the and of course, because of the diverse for technology professionals. So that's about the organization. When it comes to HR, we of course have the HR business partners in the various geographies, because geographies, there are laws of the land which have to be abided by, and specific cultural elements that are very, very particular to that region. So there is a HR business partnering concept in every location. And of course, there are the regular functions like your talent acquisition, talent development team, the corporate HR team, which also houses a center of excellence kind of model, focuses on activity and internal branding kind of thing. So that's the HR structure. And so that's about the organization. So maybe now I can move on to the other question that you asked.
The problems that you're facing and how you're going to solve them.
Right. So let me start by saying, Adit, that we didn't really start with a problem statement. I can't make a problem as such which we have tried to address by adoption of AI. The reason being, I'll tell you the reason. So for quite some time, there has been this thought that these industry 4.0 trends like artificial intelligence and RPA, etc., are these enablers or are these going to take away people's jobs?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's a thought that comes to people's minds, and there has been a misconception for quite some time that maybe the more we indulge in these things, there is going to be an issue. Yep. But that's actually so wrong. And somewhere I think we as HR professionals who are technology driven and who work for these kinds of advanced companies, like all of us who are here in this panel, it's our responsibility to dispel this myth in some way that it's not an either or. It's not that you either have to have an AI or HR. I would rather put it as an and function. So when artificial intelligence, AI and HR work hand in hand, or let's say when human intelligence meets artificial intelligence, so that's when we can actually weave magic.
Absolutely.
So it becomes an enhancer in so many ways, right? So which is why I say that my focus is not on a problem. My focus has been to see how we can enhance the experience of employees in multiple ways, how we can bring in, that delta, that positivity in different processes, right? So things have been smooth, but how we can make them smoother, you know? So that's what we have looked at. And so there are multiple uses of artificial intelligence in HR, as we would all know, right? So there are any employee life cycle process that we see, be it talent management or learning and development or recruitment. There is some footprint of AI which is already there. So I'll talk about two areas where we focused on. One has been, of course, in the area of talent acquisition. So with the help of AI, are we able to attract a better pool of talent or a more relevant pool of talent? Can we do away with those, some of those mindless, CV sifting, etc., and then having at the right ones? Could AI be an enabler there? So yes, we have used it there. So let me elaborate a little bit. So there has been this softwares which have been driving all these predictive algorithms as to what would work for us, what wouldn't, and we have found out these links between past applicants and new JDs and how they match, or how do the JDs map to the pool of applicants that is coming in. And we have seen that we are able to do good matches. You know, in one business of ours, a professional staffing business that we have. So there, we by using AI to do a better job of candidate sourcing. So definitely the resume screening process became much more streamlined. It helped. And to touch upon one fact where actually AI is a game changer. So it's not reduced because of technology. It's also about a very subtle aspect, and organizations which actually focus on these matters, and I'll come to that matter of diversity. So it does help. So like Datamatics as an organization, very recently, we launched the Datamatics Diversity Charter, where we clearly that for all our demographics, for the different populations that we have, our women employees, our experienced employees and aged employees, and from all kinds of backgrounds, we do have a workplace which has equity, and we are going to have different affirmative actions to honor that commitment that we have made to ourselves, to our employees.
Got it.
With that diversity charter, when we have instituted these resume screening processes with the help of AI-enabled tools, what that does is that takes away a huge amount of unconscious bias.
Yes.
That's one area.
Yep. I've done a lot of research on this as well. And I kind of, read somewhere that there is like, we as humans don't even know that we're biased about one particular thing, and we're making that choice. And we make those choices a lot of times, not only just while doing resume screening, but in our normal lives as well. So we really don't know that they've crept into when we do office work as well. So that's one definite thing. Now, if I can ask you something, Rima, specifically around using AI around empowering your HR team to do more, what would that be? So if you have to take one example. It does not need to be AI, it can be normal technology as well. But that one thing that enabled your HR team to either save their time or to perhaps like give them more time to do things. So for example, I give this example a lot, like surveys are a tool of making time, because you probably couldn't go to 100,000 people and do surveys physically, right? So if you have to tell me about one thing, AI, technology, anything, what would that be?
Yeah, there are actually multiple things, but yes, if I have to, there's not in any order of importance, but one thing that stands out at the moment is use of our e-learning platforms.
Right.
Because they have been there for quite some time, but we have a very advanced platform which is able to link people's needs with the kinds of offerings that we have for them. So there is an intelligent algorithm that runs in the background, and it's able to do these kinds of customizations. So we have explored this, and more we find that now that we have these limitations around connectivity, around meeting in physical spaces, so this is of great help to us, because learning platform has actually enabled us to create a digital learning culture in the organization. And that seems to be working very well, which all our survey reports are telling us.
So essentially, you've been able to take, that if I had to do it individually for each person, that would probably not be possible with an HR team, that HR team that you have today. But that algorithm or that technology enables you to do that with, everyone individually and personalized, in real time. Amazing.
Absolutely. And if I may share another example.
Yes, please shoot.
This is actually in the area of use of AI, but a very interesting use. So we truly believe, in that statement of Doug Conant, that in order to win in the marketplace, we must first win in the workplace.
Yes.
We have these employee engagement or climate surveys, as they call it. And when we have looked at different areas where we pull feedback from, so we have had these areas actually enabled by, the analysis has been enabled by AI. And because of the employee views which have been bucketed in certain directions through the different algorithms that are at work, they have actually helped us to look in certain directions. And that's what AI does for you. It's almost like maybe if you're lost in a desert and you know that civilization is 1 kilometer away, somebody has to tell you as to which direction to look at. 1 kilometer, where do I go? So that's what AI has been able to tell us.
Right. So, in the traditional sense, if you had to do surveys, let's say maybe on paper or a Google form or something like that, and take that data into an Excel sheet and do all the analytics yourself, it's a big mess, right? Versus AI actively helping you to, that, hey, these are the problem areas that you need to look at. Got it.
That's what AI did for you, and it was quite brilliant. In fact, honestly, even we were not aware of the potential that AI has to throw up these kinds of areas in. It becomes so easy for you to now chalk out the action plan.
Amazing, amazing. On that amazing note, I'll move on to Srivatsan. So, Srivatsan, you are a technology leader. You have worked with a lot of organizations. I'm sure you work with a lot of customers on a day-to-day basis as well, right? So, from your experience, give us, one or two areas, problem areas that these HR leaders and the HR community comes to you very often with, and how do you think these guys are solving it today? How do you think they're going to solve it in the future? If you can throw some light on that, I think it's going to be great for our audience here.
Absolutely, Adit. Firstly, thanks for the forum and thanks for the amazing panelists, Nikhil, Rima, and of course you, Adit. Yes, I mean, I come from a technology background. While I'm in the presence of some of the brightest HR leaders in this panel, I pride myself in enabling the HR leaders to perform to the best of their abilities.
Yep.
This is a problem that we come across quite often, and let me start a little based on or little more from a philosophical point of view. I'm standing on the shoulders of some of the industry thought leaders like Josh Bersin, etc. And the general belief is HR has become a very operational role rather than a very thought leader kind of a role, and where a change is being driven. And this is a concern, that is being resonated across the globe, and it's a very fair concern, because you have the brightest, most soft skill driven, most passionate people, most empathetic people in the HR department, and if you do not enable them to do better, that becomes a big challenge. Some of the key trends that are arising are HR or AI and technology to help HR do some of the regular operational activities like recruitment, as Rima mentioned, query management, like how your Lina does it, etc. But I would like to focus a little more in this conversation on what could HR do if with the additional time, and that is also something that we have heard a lot from our customers. One of the biggest points that we have heard from our customers is how can we engage our employees better, and
Right.
I think that's a core point that a lot of HR leaders around the world, HR thought leaders around the world are addressing right now. Because over a period of time, what we have realized is for a workforce to be motivated, you will need to have a lot of intrinsic motivation, and intrinsic motivation comes through active engagement.
Right.
You cannot expect someone to just be paid and have a safe working space and just make sure that they can work, and that doesn't work in most of our organizations. And that's where we found a lot of HR leaders reaching out to us, and a lot of other organizations to help solve them. Some of the key things that we see HR leaders worrying about are, from an engagement dimension perspective, are how do I make sure the alignment of employees to the organization is much better? How do I make that they are more aligned? Their goals are much more meaningful. Their one-on-ones are happening on time, etc. How do I empower that through assisted medium?
Yep.
The other one that we constantly hear is how do I motivate my employees? I mean, over a period of time, if you have a person doing the same thing again and again, then it becomes a huge problem. And organizations want to retain the talent which is high performing. And for a high performing talent to be retained, motivation is a very important part. Another huge aspect that comes across very vividly when we talk to a lot of our customers is how do you empower employees to voice their opinion, because feedback is the breakfast of champions. That's a very popular metaphor, and it very much applies to the HR organizations across the world. How do you collect meaningful feedback, and more importantly, how do you make feedback actionable? There is a huge role that AI can play, both in the form of participation. How do you increase the participation of your survey or your feedback collection on a regular basis, and how do you derive insights from this and make something actionable? Finally, across all these things, another thing that HR leaders want to solve is the sense of community. How do you bring a sense of belonging, community sense how do you bring, how do you use technology to make sure that you are not alone and you are in an organization where it's a village and everyone knows everyone else, and
Yep.
that's a huge sense that a lot of our customers have come to us and have asked us to help them with.
So
And
essentially,
yeah.
so if I can quickly put in some thoughts. So it's like, you know, once the HR operations are taken care of, something like what Nikhil mentioned and Rima mentioned. So the question then becomes that you have some time left to do, organization enablement, to be like do business first, initiatives. So now you mentioned like 4 or 5 pillars, right? The top things that a lot of organizations are coming to you for. Now, I'm going to ask you one direct question. What do you think is the biggest one that people are coming to you for, right? And maybe then we can pass on the baton to Nikhil and Rima to put their comments. So essentially, because you're a technology leader, you have a lot of these conversations. What's the one thing that is the most common? So you have that time that we have saved from HR ops. What's that one thing that you think HR teams want to solve at priority or want to focus on priority?
Absolutely. So, I mean, let me just give a little bit of a forward there also. So, a lot of times HR leaders come to us and say, how can we be drivers of change? We are
Right.
a very small team. A HR team is typically smaller than the rest of the departments. How can we be change drivers? How do we make sure participation is very high? And the biggest question that comes to us is, how do I make sure that all these pillars are equal? You cannot make one pillar. These are like the sense organs. You cannot suppress one and you cannot
Yep.
empower the other. But
Yep.
In general, what comes as the biggest change drivers, how do I make sure I become the change driver in the organization? How do I make sure that the people manager in the organization participates with me? How do I make sure that the department heads and I get the participation of my management team whenever I do
Right.
something? Some of the examples that we can look for are, for example, how do I make sure that the performance management happens on time? So through
Right.
smart nudges, through making sure that the check-ins happen on time, making sure that your goals are set appropriate to the individual. All these can be heavily assisted by AI, and the assistance goes directly to the manager with the oversight of the HR. So that way, HRs actually become change drivers here. HRs
Yep.
can set the policies, HRs can drive what they want to achieve, whereas the technology helps them heavily in converting it and actually making the action. Another
Right.
one that that came when Rima also mentioned is, how do you make surveys more actionable?
Right.
That's a very beautiful point that comes because we collect a lot of insights, but a lot of these insights just get lost over a period of time, and surveys get repeated again and again. How do you make
Right.
insights more actionable? One of the key advantages of having AI there is, can I make an insight relevant for HR and or give bucketize for HR and say you have to take action to enable this insight or this comment using this department or using this
Right.
technique.
Right.
Uh, Pairing feedback and insights with what is the next step, what are the next best practices. Because at the end of the day, we have to understand that everyone is in the learning curve, and whatever are the best practices in the industry, if we can empower the HR teams across the globe to actually adopt them, it will be the best. So these are a couple of examples I can think of. Because you said the top few, I'm not elaborating further. I would let the rest of the panelists.
Absolutely. So Srivatsan, you mentioned a bunch of things. Now, if I have to, quickly summarize for the audience here, we have saved time. Now we are basically using technology to enable managers and, essentially enabling HR to become change drivers overall. And one of that could be enabling managers. Of course, there could be multiple functions of that project or that initiative itself. But essentially, one of them could be enabling managers to, let's say, do performance management on time, and it can have multiple different use cases like, also improving engagement and getting actionable insights. Something that Rima also mentioned. So, on this note itself, I want to kind of open it up, and Nikhil and Rima, I'd like to bring you in on this conversation. So let's say you had this HR ops piece, which is taking away a lot of HR business partner time. I think this is something Nikhil mentioned. We're getting 50 calls, 100 calls. We've changed our performance management process, and we're getting these calls now. Assuming you've got products, you've got AI technology to solve for that. So now my question to you, both of you, Nikhil and Rima, is: you save this time. How would you probably use it? Let's say, let's pick one. Let's say for on the engagement side, how do you use that time on bringing that insight? So Rima, you mentioned that which direction to look at is extremely important, and AI can help you do that. But if you can elaborate a bit more, maybe if you can bring out some real life examples. I know we're running out of time, so maybe a minute. If I can give you a minute, and then probably Nikhil a minute for you as well. In which, if you can tell us, some real life examples, that can be great. Or if you're working on something, that can be great as well. So Rima, over to you.
Okay, so if I have understood the question correctly, so we have introduction of hello. HR operations relatively made simple with the use of technology. So what do we do with the spare time, free time? Where do we focus that time on?
Yep.
So, very clearly, Nikhil, when it comes to the culture of an organization, we have to have a mix of high technology and high touch.
Yes.
Once the technology part has been taken into account, I think the focus has been put more and more on the high touch aspect. So during COVID times, I'll just talk about one initiative. So we have done these virtual voice of employee platforms where we have had people from across geographies, and it was a session titled Socially Distanced Yet Mentally Connected. So bringing in that fabric of that organization, making it known to everyone that are digitally connected, and we are just a phone call away. So while there is technology which is all pervasive, but we are here for you. And kind of things that we cover, because we know that operations to a great extent has been facilitated by technology, we could focus on items like on things like well-being. So
Right.
actually take people through aspects like how do you bring in a smooth coordination between the physical, mental, spiritual and emotional quadrants of your life in order to be at peace with yourself, because if you're happy, if you're at peace, automatically productivity follows.
Absolutely.
So say technology helped us to bring in a much better connect with
Right.
employees in the long run.
Makes a lot of sense. So you're basically, having, though we are all like really, really far, we are not seeing each other for a lot of time, but we are still connected, and you're also using that ability to, log in and come online in a second to teach them about other and more, not more, but definitely very, very important aspects of life. That makes a lot of sense. So Nikhil, if you can quickly take us through a bit of your thoughts on this. You've saved some time. HR can do really new initiatives. They can spend time in new initiatives. What would some of them be for you?
Yeah, sure, Adit. So Adit, I mean, I always look at it from this way, right? So after COVID, people have started working from home, and one of the thing that has come up consistently is they're saving a couple of hours traveling to offices, right? And now everybody is coming back and saying we are more productive. What has happened?
Mhm.
You have saved some time, and you come back and say you are more productive. It's exactly out. If you're going to kind of give away something, obviously that saved time can be invested in the pressing needs of the organization. There are
Absolutely.
enough of things that are around, right? And not always organizations can fund resources.
Mhm.
So you can take a back seat. So if you're able to save this time, maybe what happens is then people can start spending time on looking at data much more deeply, doing audits, right? Giving much more meaning, having good dialogues with employees, right? Otherwise, what happens is you're just kind of burned out and in the day-to-day things.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I think this all gets stitched to you save time, and it allows you to kind of take care of your burning needs on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's kind of like both of you had very similar responses, but also Nikhil, your technology domain definitely rubs off with data and auditing coming into the picture. So that's great. So I think it's time for us now to open the conversation to our audience as well. So I'd request everyone who is with us today to, if you have any questions, please ask away. I already have a couple in the chat panel. So yeah, I'm going to start off. So the first question essentially is, how can AI plus HR help managers to be better people managers? That is, to improve employee productivity and reduce employee attrition. So the crux of the question is to focus on the managers, so to have AI and the HR team enable the people managers to be better at improving employee productivity and reducing attrition. So maybe I'm going to give this to you, Srivatsan, because you talked about a bit of these things. So if you can quickly tell us your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. So, in general, good managers are not born; they are created. I think that's the fundamental truth that we all have to understand. Managers also grow over a period of time, become
Yep.
owners of skill set, or become from a skill level job to a people management job. A constant learning, constant assistance at the bottommost level is something that is required. What AI can provide is insights. AI can provide meaningful insights, tell them how can they be effective manager, comparing them with other people in the organization, comparing them with the other people in the team, or comparing them with other people in the industry, etc. Get them constant feedback, reinforce positive behavior, tell them to appreciate, tell them to just give a nudge every now and then to tell them that, okay, today you have to check in with your team and make sure that they
Yep.
are
Yep.
actually doing their work. So
Yep.
these are things that AI can definitely help where AI can definitely help to break better feedback.
Makes a lot of sense. So it's essentially taking something that requires individual attention from the HR team. So probably if we had like 1,000 people HR team, we'll be able to make those calls to the managers and say, hey, this is specific things that you'll be needing to do, and then hand holding them throughout the process. But unfortunately, we don't have those many people in our HR teams
Absolutely.
today. So it's using technology and AI to fill that gap and enabling managers and HR to do more. That's amazing. So let's move on to the next question. So Sib Sagar Shaw is asking us about, can anyone tell that while an AI virtual assistant interacts with employees, what is the level of EQ it touches upon? So probably Nikhil, you're going to be the best person to answer this one. So over to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and this is absolutely a very good kind of a question, because and again it goes back to the point that when technology plays a role, the human touch, what happens to it, right? So in my minds, I mean, as you have this virtual assistants who would interact with people, first of all, the element that has to go in the complete construct of it is the design. You don't kind of design this that complete virtual assistant is going to take over and there's no human touch point going to be, right?
Yes.
That element has to get addressed in as we design how the virtual assistants are going to work. The
Yep.
second thing is also when the virtual assistant is being trained to respond,
Mhm.
uh, in my minds again, this aspect of having EQ, or how the words would be kind of being processed by an employee, is very very important. So
Right.
as you kind of design all this and train the virtual assistants or the bots, this element of response has to be taken care of.
Right. So I still remember our conversation, in the early days, where you mentioned how important it is to, vet each and everything that goes out to the end employee, to the end, internal customer, as we call them. And, it should always, also embody and have the same brand and the brand voice as the company itself, as the organization itself. That's amazing. So moving on to the next question, I have a very interesting one from an anonymous attendee. Now, this person is asking us, what could be the next generation products other than virtual assistants and chatbots that AI can deliver to help improve HR and OD processes? So I'm essentially going to give this to Srivatsan, because you are a technology leader. So take it away, Srivatsan.
Right. So, I mean, other than the assistances, I think the biggest product that would, or the biggest value add, I would say, would be in the form of insights. AI can derive insights because AI can churn or can consume a lot of data over a period of time without blinking an eye. And that
Right.
data is what is making it unbiased. I also saw another question: what are the ethical challenges of our downsides of using AI? And one of the things that I feel confident about using AI is over a large data set, it kind of balances out. If you have a
Right.
large data set, AI becomes unbiased. I think app developers like me or Adit, we'll have to be very careful making sure that our data is as diverse as possible. We should not be taking biased data to begin with. But yeah, I think that would be a huge place where next generation products would appear.
Makes sense. So, this takes me back to our initial days, when we were building Lean AI from scratch. So, initially, of course, we did not have a large database. Today, we have one of the largest databases of, HR data and HR questions, but we did not have that in the start. So, at that time, I remember a lot of our customers and prospective customers asking us, how many wrong answers will Lena give, right? How can we be sure? Because all of this is extremely all of the HR policies that we have are extremely legal, and they have repercussions in terms of legality associated with them. So I remember that, and it was a good time for sure. But yes, Srivatsan, completely echo your answer that over a period of time, as data grows, all of that takes a backseat and becomes a very, 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 very insignificant portion of the entire set. So moving on, I have one more very interesting question, which I think, Rima, you should take up. The question is, will AI be able to handle tasks that require a more personal touch? So this is asked by Jagruti Pathak. And Rima, you can take it away.
Can I have the question once again, please? There was some audio issue.
Sure. So Jagruti has asked, will AI be able to handle tasks that require a more personal touch?
Okay. Yeah. Again, this goes into that domain of maybe dispelling myths about AI. So, Jagruti, what AI does for us is it enables us with a much better sense of decision making. So, you know which are the problems which require that personal touch and which are the ones which you can solve through technology. So the very fact that AI helps us to get rid of quite a few operational challenges, it automatically means that we are now free to deal with it in a personal way with that human touch. Now, can AI help there? So I would like to again draw attention back to that aspect of unconscious bias that I had mentioned, that because AI helps dispel that, that in itself is a very good resolution of an issue that keeps cropping up, because we must remember every second almost 11 pieces of information, 11 million pieces of information gets bombarded in our brain, and brain having a mind of its own can only process 40 out of these. So what happens to the rest? So in this processing there is a lot of bias that comes in automatically. So the moment AI helps us to get rid of those, that means we have been able to solve a big personal problem which in a way plagues professionals today.
So it's not just about getting rid of the repetitive, boring things. It's also about having innate, problems of people that we cannot solve for ourselves,
Hang
being
on. Yes.
being enabled by AI and technology to solve. So I know we are nearing the end of this. So I'd like to quickly conclude this with a small, summary of what all we went through today. Now, first of all, thank you so much, Srivatsan, Nikhil, and Rima, to be with us today. Thank you so much for taking out the time. Now, we went through how HR operations, how Nikhil, who leads the HR tech and HR operations at Cipla, found out that that complex organization which services employees through like 12, 13 countries of the world can use simple AI virtual assistants to improve service delivery, the HR service delivery and employee experience while saving HR time. We learned how Rima has who essentially had the leverage of having a great technology company, and use that to do a lot of data insighting, removing a lot of human bias using AI. And then at last we heard from Srivatsan about the challenges a lot of HR teams are coming to Srivatsan for, and their team for, and how they can use AI again to do a lot of deep data analytics and a lot of enablement for the entire organization. So one side, you save time, you save energy by using AI and technology in HR. And on the other side, you get to spend it in a much better business focused fashion. So again, thank you so much to everyone who joined us, to all the attendees, and also to our panelists for taking out the time and spending it with us. All of you will probably get a video recording, so please feel free to distribute it within your networks. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Take
lot.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bebo, Bebo, Bebo.